So, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's newspaper in a very short span of time within 20 minutes. Okay, so the idea is to cover the important news items that featured in August 2024's newspapers. All right. Now, this lecture series is very important because current affairs are very important for your civil services examination. And mind you, we will cover only those news items which are important for your civil services examination. We won't cover every news. Okay, only those which are important for civil services UPSC examination, and that's why we are going to take 20 minutes only, because I know that as a civil services aspirant your time is very precious, so I won't waste much of your time. All right, so enough of the introduction. Let's straight away jump to the topics of the day. What important news items featured in today's newspaper? These are the important topics. Okay, we'll confine our lecture to these four topics alone, though many other news items were covered in today's newspapers. But for us, for civil services aspirants, only these four news items are of importance. All right, so the first topic is Chandrayaan 3 rover findings. So, our Chandrayaan 3 module consisted of a lander and a rover. Lander's name was Vikram and rover's name was Pragyan. So, there were a few instruments aboard the Chandrayaan 3 rover Pragyan, and it has made certain measurements which has led to a nice discovery regarding the lunar surface, moon surface. Okay, so we'll cover this. Then recently RBI Governor Shaktikant Das and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has raised an alarm regarding the divergence in credit and deposit growth. Banks are giving way more credit than they are getting deposits. Generally, what banks do is banks gather deposits from us and then extend loans out of those deposits. But deposits are not growing as much as the credit or loans provided by banks are growing. So, this is a worrying sign. We'll talk about this. Then recently there has been a controversy regarding the role of governor and council of ministers, and this controversy is happening in Karnataka, where Karnataka's government and chief minister are at odds. All right, and in the end we'll talk about Malaysia, orangutan diplomacy by Malaysia. What is this? Why is it controversial? What will happen as a result of this? We'll talk about this. Okay, so these are the four news items that we'll confine our attention to. Okay, all right then. Start with the topic number. Let's start with topic number one, which is Chandrayaan 3 rover findings. So, what is in the news? So, studies carried out by Alpha X-ray Spectrometer (APXS), which was one of the two instruments on the rover. The name of the rover is Pragyan. Of Chandrayaan 3 has produced new evidence to support the hypothesis that the lunar surface was covered with a sea of molten material magma in its early periods. So, look, Chandrayaan 3 had a lander module, it had a rover also. This is the lander, this is the rover. Okay, rover has two important instruments. One is alpha X-ray spectrometer, the other is laser induced breakdown spectroscope. As far as APXS is concerned, it will analyze soil samples. Okay, so soil surface analysis would be done by this spectrometer. And it has done the analysis, it has sent data back home, and on the analysis of that data, it was found that in its earlier stages, moon's surface was made up of liquid magma, hot molten magma. Okay, so this hypothesis that moon surface was molten magma has been confirmed by the findings of alpha X-ray spectrometer. All right, the analysis actually revealed that the current rocks, surface rocks on moon, are made up of two things: magma, molten magma that solidified eventually, and the other is deeper layers of the lunar surface. So basically what happened was the current soil on the lunar surface was analyzed, and it was found that the material found in the current lunar soil is made up of molten magma and deeper layers of lunar surface. Okay, so these are the findings. These findings were published in the international magazine called Nature. Okay, and that is why it was in the news. But this is not that important for us. What is important for us is facts about moon and facts about rover. Okay, so let's talk about evolution of moon. So basically, moon was formed due to collision of a large asteroid with Earth about 4.2 to 4.3 billion years ago. So basically, moon, what happened was there was Earth, then an asteroid collided with the Earth. A massive collision happened, and a piece of Earth actually got detached from it, and this piece is today known as the moon. Okay, all right. As you guys all know, you must have known this, that Pacific Ocean is basically where moon was actually. Moon was that piece which occupied the Pacific Ocean, but as soon as this asteroid uh, attacked or in a way collided with Earth, that piece got detached. It made the moon, and a depression was formed on the Earth's surface that was filled by water. That is today known as Pacific Ocean. All of this happened 4.2 to 4.3 billion years ago. In its early life, lunar surface was an ocean of magma. As it cooled down, the heavier minerals made up of silicon and magnesium, called olivine, pyroxene, they sank into the deeper layers, and lighter minerals made up of calcium and sodium, they came up. Okay, so the outer layer of lunar surface is made up of calcium and sodium minerals. The deeper layers are made up of olivine and pyroxene, which are rich in silicon and magnesium, because silicon and magnesium are heavy, calcium and sodium are light. All right, just remember just remember a few facts about Chandrayaan 3. It had a lander called Vikram. These are the facts that you need to be aware of. And it had a rover called Pragyan. Okay, just remember the two instruments also that are aboard the rover Pragyan: APXS, alpha ray X-ray spectrometer, LIBS, laser induced breakdown spectroscope. All right, okay, that's about it. Now let's straight away shift to topic number 2: divergence in credit and deposit growth. Now look, you all know how banks function. If you don't, just listen to me for a brief period, for a few minutes. Okay, how do banks function? So basically what banks do is, banks take deposits from you, right? And they pay you a certain interest rate on it. Let's suppose they pay you an interest rate of 3% on your deposits, on your FDs. And banks use that deposit to give out loans or credit. So the money you deposit with the banks use that money to provide loans to people. And banks actually provide those loans at a higher interest rate. Okay, so banks take deposit at 3%, for example, and give out loans at 5%. The difference between the two, 2%, is where banks earn profit from. These are known as banks' interest margins. All right. Now, recently, Finance Minister and RBI Governor actually found out that the credit given by banks has been growing for quite some time now. Loans given by banks is growing by 13.7%, but the deposits into banks are not growing at a similar rate. They are growing by 10.6%. So basically, there is a gap between growth in deposits and growth in credit. Okay, so banks are giving more loans than they are getting deposits. All right, now this is a problem because banks need money to give out loans from. So therefore, if banks do not have enough deposits, they'll take money from somewhere else. They will take credit at lower interest rate, or they'll source money at a little higher interest rate from other areas. Okay, this would create some problems. Therefore, it is of extreme importance that deposits increase commensurately with the increase in credit growth. Okay, currently the credit to deposit ratio has been around 80%. That means if banks receive 100 rupees in deposits, 80 rupees are given out as loans. This ratio should have been lesser. That means deposits should have been way more than the loans, credit given. Now, why are people not depositing that much money into banks? Well, people are now aware of other lucrative options like stock market. So they channel their savings in other areas like gold, stock markets, and they don't deposit their money in FDs with banks. That is why banks do not have enough deposits to finance their loans, and therefore they have to finance or fund themselves from other sources which are a bit expensive. Because you see, banks do not have to pay that much interest rate on deposits, but they have to pay interest rate on other areas of funding. That is why it is expensive for banks to take funding from other sources other than deposits. And because of that, the interest margins of banks are declining, their profitability is declining. All right. Now, what are the consequences? What will happen if this process continues? Okay. First of all, sourcing funding from other areas other than deposits is actually costlier for banks. For banks, current and savings account, the deposits in current and savings account are the lowest cost source of funds. Okay, low cost source of funds. So banks do not have to pay that much interest rate on savings account and current account, but banks have to pay a lot of interest rate on other accounts. So it is high cost for banks, which reduces their interest margins. Plus, another problem is that, look, to finance themselves, banks actually take loan from other areas. These are short-term loans. That means banks have to return them. Okay. Now, this creates some risk, because what if banks take loan from someone and they give out loan to some other person? That some other person does not return back that loan, but banks have to return back this loan which they had taken. Okay. So at times, banks face liquidity crunch, liquidity issues, which can be destabilizing in nature. So RBI governor is actually worried about this. All right. That's about it. So remember this fact. Okay. Now we'll talk about governor and council of ministers and the relationship between a governor and council of ministers of state government. Now, why was this in news? On August 16, Karnataka Governor Thawar Chand Gehlot sanctioned or gave approval for police to investigate the CM's involvement in a response to petitions filed by three anti-corruption activists. So look, there were petitions filed against the Chief Minister of Karnataka for corruption. Okay. Now that corruption case cannot be prosecuted. Okay. But Karnataka governor actually gave permission to the police to, to investigate these cases, despite the fact that chief minister actually advised the Karnataka government to not allow this, but Karnataka governor to not allow this, but governor nevertheless gave permission to the police to investigate cases against the chief minister of Karnataka. Now, this has rigged up some controversy because governor of a state is bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. And Council of Ministers is actually the body. Council of Ministers is headed by CM. So I'm sure Karnataka CM must have given the advice to the governor that please do not allow police to investigate this case. But the governor actually did not listen to CM and nonetheless allowed the police to investigate this case. Now, naturally, the CM of Karnataka went to Karnataka High Court and said that governor is bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. So how can governor take a decision which is contrary to CM's decision? And Karnataka High Court actually put a stay on Karnataka governor's decision till August 29th. Now, what is the constitutional relationship between governor and CM? So Article 163 clearly mentions that governor is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, except the fact that if under the Constitution the governor is required to use his discretion, to use his own decision, then he can do so. So generally, the governor is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, but if the Constitution permits, in certain cases regarding the Constitution, in certain areas, governor can use his own discretion and go against the advice given by Council of Ministers. Now, what are those conditions under which governor can use his own discretion? This is not clearly mentioned in the Constitution. Okay? So the governor is actually saying to the Karnataka High Court that I am within my rights to use this discretion. But Chief Minister of Karnataka and Council of Ministers of Karnataka, they are saying that governor does not have this discretion. Government should be bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. We actually sent a resolution to the governor on August 1, but governor is not fulfilling that resolution, that decision of ours. So now it is up to the court to decide whether in this particular case, governor was bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers, or it is that circumstance or the circumstances exist which made governor use his discretion as per Article 163 of the Constitution. So Karnataka High Court will take that decision in the near future. All right? Okay. So let's straight away jump to topic number 4, our last topic of the day. Orangutan diplomacy by Malaysia. So what happened? Recently, Malaysia's Plantation and Commodities Minister Johari Ghani on August 18 tweaked his earlier proposal of sending critically endangered orangutans as gift to palm oil purchasing countries. So look, Malaysia is a palm oil producing country and it exports that palm oil, okay, to various countries. Now, Malaysia's minister actually used orangutan because orangutans are found in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei alone. Okay, so what Malaysia's minister did was he came out with a policy under which these orangutans would be given as gifts to palm oil buying countries. Those countries which buy palm oil from Malaysia, Malaysia would be providing orangutans as gift to them. Okay, this is known as orangutan diplomacy. Now, this policy was heavily criticized, and therefore, Malaysia's minister had to change this policy, tweak this policy. Under the new policy, Malaysia minister said that orangutans would be given as gifts, but orangutans won't be sent to these palm oil purchasing countries. Basically, these palm oil purchasing countries would sponsor these orangutans. These orangutans would be kept in Malaysia, and the money given by palm oil purchasing countries would be used to save orangutans. All right, but people are criticizing this policy of Malaysia. Why? Because look, orangutans would be given as gift to palm oil buying countries. Now, Malaysia actually produces palm oil. For palm oil production, Malaysia has to grow palm plantations. Now, palm plantations are actually involved in heavy deforestation. So, if you have to lay down a palm plantation, you have to deforest that area. Now, deforestation has reduced the amount of habitat for these orangutans. So, this leads to habitat destruction for these orangutans, and that is why these orangutans are dwindling in their numbers. Their population is declining, and as per the latest IUCN status, they are critically endangered. So it is because of palm oil that these orangutans are dying, because to grow palm oil, their forests have to be cleared. Okay. Now, this was the whole issue. This was the entire policy which was changed. But let's talk about orangutans. Who are orangutans? So, orangutans are great apes found in the rainforest of islands of Borneo and Sumatra. Now, these islands of Borneo and Sumatra, these rainforests are in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Brunei. So, orangutans are only found in these three countries. Okay. Currently, the orangutan population is 1,20,000, which is rapidly declining because of deforestation due to palm oil plantations. Okay. Now, orangutans are quite intelligent creatures. They are the largest arboreal mammals. What do we mean by arboreal? Animals that live on trees. So, these are the largest mammals that live on trees. And they share 96.4% of their DNA with us. So, 96.4% of their DNA is similar to that of humans. They are highly intelligent creatures. Okay. So their population is declining, they are critically endangered, and because of this policy of Malaysia alone. So what is this policy? Let's talk about this policy. So the policy involved gifting orangutans to palm oil buying countries in the world. Now this policy was inspired by China's panda policy. So what China does is China actually sends pandas to other countries. Those countries pay China some money for it, and China utilizes that money for conservation of pandas. Okay, wildlife conservation. Now, Malaysia, the world's second largest palm oil producer, is criticized for causing the loss of habitat for orangutans due to palm oil plantations. Okay. Now, why is this policy criticized? The animal welfare groups say that your policy is hypocritical. On the one hand, you are saying that the money generated by gifting orangutans to other countries would be used for wildlife conservation. But you are giving these gifts to palm oil buying countries. That means these countries would buy more palm oil from Malaysia. That would lead to more palm oil plantations. That would lead to more deforestation and more loss of habitat for orangutans. So, this policy of yours, on one hand, you are saying you'll conserve orangutans. On the other hand, you are actually destroying their habitat because of palm oil. Plus, they say that this policy also came because there was some pressure from European Union. European Union actually put a ban on import of goods that are linked to deforestation. And palm oil is directly the result of deforestation. So Malaysia was not able to sell, or Malaysia won't be able to sell palm oil to Europe. Okay, because Europe has banned import of goods that are a result of deforestation. So that is why they came out with this policy. They actually changed this policy. I'm sorry. They had to change this policy. Why? They're saying that the money we get will be used to conserve orangutans so that European Union softens its stand and buys their palm oil. Okay, this is the situation. This is known as orangutan diplomacy or panda diplomacy, as panda diplomacy in case of China. Okay, And with that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it added value to your preparation. It would add more value if you're regular and consistent with this lecture series. So make sure you make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. And if you do so, then you will definitely do not have to worry about current affairs in your next exam. All right. On that note, I'll be signing off. Thank you, everyone.